Hey, Jen Max, welcome to Cabo San Lucas, where I am with Gary and Peggy Rima, and they have a house where they own the house, but not the land. And this is something that I think a lot of people think this is the way it works in Mexico, but it's actually not that common. Most people own the house, own the land. Maybe they have a bank trust, maybe not, depending on where they live in Mexico. But I wanted to talk to him specifically because he's got a really cool house here that I'm going to share a tour of his house. It is a kind of a unique situation and with a unique history. So let's meet Gary.
I'm Gary, and my wife Peggy and I, we moved to Cabo 3 years ago, roughly. In fact, 3 years ago this month. After doing a lot of research for several years before that, we wanted really to be somewhere by the beach, warm weather, and most places in the U.S. that you're going to do that are 7 figures and up, and that didn't quite fit. So after doing a lot of research, we moved to Cabo 3 years ago in summer of 2023. We rented for a year. Well, we kind of got the lay of the land more. Peggy from the beginning said she'd love to have a palapa house, but they're not very common here. And we didn't think it was going to work out until some friends of ours found this little development called Paloma Village. And they found it and invited us to come while they were looking at a house to potentially purchase. They bought theirs, and about 90 days later, we bought this one. And we moved in, actually, interestingly enough, 2 years ago today, on June 1st of 2024.
Well, happy anniversary, happy home anniversary. And let's hear a little bit about the history of this because, as I mentioned, it is a unique development.
Paloma Village, as mentioned, has been here about 40 years. It started as a trailer park. The owners put it together to rent spaces to people with trailers to come down, mostly snowbirds who'd come down for maybe half a year and park their big travel trailers here and use it as their place down here. Over the years, some of them ended up staying longer and longer and leaving the trailer longer and longer, and then eventually started some of them building around the trailer. And then eventually some of them decided, let's just build houses in here. So at this point in time, there's 22 homes in here. 2 of them still have trailers in them, although you can't see that from the outside. They built totally around it, but part of the interior living space is still a trailer. But that's only 2 of 22. The other 20 are homes similar to ours, although the floor plans are all different. There are no 2 alike in the whole place. But you'll see a tour of the home, and there's 21 other ones. And that's, over 40 years, it kind of went from trailer park to kind of a mix to almost all homes. We own the building. We do not own the land. And certainly when we first started looking at it, that raises some red flags. And there are pros and cons to it, without a doubt. The cons are pretty obvious. You don't own the land. So we pay a monthly land lease payment, which is kind of HOA because we have a community pool and we have on-site 24/7 manager and some of the other things you get in a normal HOA, but we're paying more than that. An HOA would probably be $250 to $300 a month in this area. We're paying $800. So that's the difference paying for the lease of the land.
So you lease the land, but you own the house that's sitting on top of it. So I want to know kind of like, can you sell the house? Obviously, you can't move the house. We're going to do that tour in just a little bit. It is not a movable house by any means. And also, what kind of risks might there be in terms of the developer or the owner of the property, developing the property or saying, you know what, it's time for a change?
That's something we talked about a lot before we made the move to do this. And as I mentioned, there's pros and cons. The land lease that we have is a 15-year lease. So once we sign the lease and they sign the lease, we've got the next 15 years. It would be pretty difficult for them to break that lease earlier than the 15 years. So it kind of gives you a 15-year runway, if you will, if they change their mind of deciding, what are you going to do? And we looked at that and debated that back and forth. But to give you an idea, now this place needed a little work when we moved into it, and we put a little money into it. And there are some that have sold for a little more than ours, but we bought this 2 years ago for $130,000. And we've been told that a similar house to this with ownership of the land, including the yard space and everything around it, that we'd probably be looking in the 600 to 750,000 range.
So that's pretty amazing to be able to buy in to Cabo at $130,000. That's just unheard of, especially for a house. I don't think you can even get a condo for those prices anymore. And you're going to be paying a good deal of fees when you have a condo. But let's hear more about this lease. Like, how does it work? Is it, how far are they into their 15 years? Does the cost go up every year? How does that all work?
How far are we into the lease? We've been here 2 years today, but we're less than a year into the lease, because every year they rewrite the lease and they present us a new one that we sign and they sign, and it adds a year to the end. So that's the rolling part of the lease. So it stays at 15 years. So when it gets down to 14, then it's ready to sign a new lease to bring it back to 15. So you've always got somewhere between 14 and 15 years. So again, we looked at that and said, we paid 130. We're paying about 10,000 a year on the land lease. So take that for 15 years. That's 150,000 plus the 130 is 280. That's still way less than you could buy this house for anywhere else. And to be honest, I mean, for us, and it varies according to your age, obviously, but for us, when we moved in here 2 years ago, I was 69. I looked at it and said, okay, 69 and 15 is 84. And odds are, even if they decided tomorrow to do something, at 84, I may be in a position where we don't really need this anymore and we'll have done something with it by that point. So what would we do with it? Well, we bought it from the previous owner. We can sell it. And it has gone through previous owners. And there's been a lot of appreciation over the years. Some of these homes, like 15 years ago, I know of one which happens to be for sale right now, that 15 years ago sold for, I think, 40-some thousand. And now it's going to bring about 150. The advantages of not owning the land, you pay no property taxes because you're not a property owner legally. So transferring this, if we sell it, is via bill of sale. It's a lot like buying or selling a car. So there's no documents that say you're a landowner, so you pay no property taxes, and you basically don't exist to either the Mexican or U.S. governments as a landowner.
And I started out this video talking about how you can own land and sometimes you have to put it in a trust. And that is something, it's called a Fideicomiso. And it is, if you're within, I think, 50 kilometers of the water, of the ocean, or 100 kilometers of a border, an international border, then you have to have a bank trust hold your property. It's your property, you can sell it and all that kind of thing. But it is something you pay $500 a year for-ish. And I think it costs a couple $1,000s to get it set up. And if you want to change it, if you want to change the beneficiaries, things like that, it does cost, there are costs involved. So that is something that these guys don't need to deal with, is the Fideicomiso, because they're not the landowner. It's a lease. So I do want to know, though, with that lease, is it possible for it to go up?
And the answer is yes, it's possible. Written into the lease, they are allowed to raise it up to 5% per year. Over time, if you look back over the last, 10 to 15 years at least of history here, they've raised it every 3 to 4 years by that amount. So it does go up over time, but the percentage that it's gone up over time has been, if anything, lower than the rate of inflation, certainly not greater than the rate of inflation. And one other thing, the land, by the way, is owned by a family. The patriarch of the family is a dual citizen, and the land is owned in the name of a U.S. LLC that he holds.
So we're going to switch gears and give you a tour of the property. And we're about a mile off the main road, and there's a dirt road. But once you reach here, there's a gate. And then beyond that is a paved road once you're inside the property. But let's start at the front door and come on inside.
Okay, so when you walk in the front door of the place, you come into the dining room. And the dining room, kitchen, and living room kind of in that order. There, that's the front half of the house, if you will, the public part of the house. And that is all palm frond, palapa roof, and open air with only screens. We tell our cats that they are blessed. They have the world's largest catio. So that's all open. And the kitchen has a big island, and it's kind of, you'll see kind of a curved thing in the middle of the area. So it's dining room, kitchen, living room. We're sitting in the living room right now. And we've got fans and all, and we get nice breezes through. But of course, in the summertime, since we are year-round residents, it does get a little hot. So we'll be talking about kind of our summertime retreat further into this tour.
So that is the palapa side of the house. Palapa being that it is a palm thatched roof, not very air conditionable. So let's head over to the air conditioned side now.
So as you walked in, that was the dining room. And if you turn to your left, you come into the master suite. Our bedroom with a bath attached to it. The bath is kind of more traditional Mexican. The sinks are actually kind of out in the bedroom with the toilet and shower on into a little bathroom. And then off the back of that, there's a walk-through closet with a laundry room behind it. And that room, as well as the other bedrooms and den, those all have windows and are fully air conditioned. And then as you walk through the front palapa portion and into the living room where I'm sitting now, directly behind me is a door which goes into a hallway. And on the left side of that hallway is the guest bedroom, or kind of the middle bedroom, if we might call it, along with a second bath. So that's set up just as a guest bedroom. It, of course, also is completely sealed with windows and has an air conditioner. Down the other direction is our multi-purpose room. It's a third bedroom. It has a Murphy bed, a queen-size Murphy bed. And that's nice because it folds up against the wall. Very seldom do we need 3 bedrooms. So that is our den. That's where we retreat to in the summer when it gets too hot out here. So in there, in addition to the Murphy bed, we also have a nice 75-inch TV, and we've got good IPTV service where we can watch whatever we want or go back in there and play games or just enjoy the air conditioning.
So that room also has really wide sliding glass doors that take you into the outside. So let's get a little bit of the outside.
So those sliding glass doors you mentioned, those do open all the way wall to wall on that one wall, as you be able to see. So when the weather permits, it's a beautiful indoor-outdoor living with those sliding back and disappearing into the walls on either side. And that takes you out to an outdoor patio area where there's a kind of a fireplace, there's a sink, we've got a table there, and a nice little kind of hanging egg chair. And then right next to that is a barbecue. So that's the outdoor area. When we have parties, like we're known for having a Christmas party every year, and we open everything up, great time of year to do it. And between inside and outside, we've got about 50 people at that Christmas party here. And with the indoor-outdoor living, it makes it very doable in this house. So essentially, we're talking 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, with the third bedroom being bigger, and that's the den and multi-purpose room with the Murphy bed. Now around through the yard, first of all, I think you'll see there's a seating area out in the yard with a seats and a swing and a fire pit. Great in the wintertime. And then we do have a rooftop deck. And you'll see from the rooftop deck, we get wonderful views of Cabo San Lucas harbor and the marina and the lights of the city at night. So we can see the cruise ships and everything. As I say, we always said we wanted to at least be ocean view when we retired. So here we are. We've got a beautiful ocean view from the rooftop.
So just a few more questions before we wrap up the video. And so my first question is, what did your family think when you told them you were moving to Mexico?
Well, when Brighton asked that question, my wife laughed from the back room. So that kind of gives you the answer right there. A lot of them, I think, thought we'd lost our minds. It's fine to go there on vacation, but what do you mean you're moving there? So, They were not too sure that we were being very smart about that. But now that we've been here 3 years, I think, they understand a lot more about what it's like down here. We've had some family and friends that have been down here and visited, and we've been able to tell them a lot more about it. And hey, we've been here 3 years and we're not dead and we're still doing well. And so they're much more resigned to it and much more comfortable with it at this point than they were when we first did it.
Well, I want to know if there's anything that you would do differently if you had to do it over again.
So the only significant thing that we would do differently is we made one big mistake, and it's one that you hear about down here too often. We contracted pre-sale for a condo before we ever found this place. And it's now almost 2 years behind the original contracted promised delivery date, and they still don't have them quite ready for delivery, although they're finally able to list them on MLS without it being pre-sale anymore. So they're within about 90 days of delivery, which only makes them a full solid 2 years late. And we're still working to get all of our money back on that. So certainly if we had that to do over again, we had heard about pre-sale, but the realtors we work with said, well, they knew this company, they thought they were trustworthy and that this would work out okay, and it didn't. So our advice is there is no circumstance where pre-sale is probably a good idea. And we're working still to get some of that money back. And, that's the only significant thing that we would do differently.
Well, there we go. That's a big one. And it is a good warning for pre-sale. Pre-sale, essentially, you take on risk in order for a reward of paying a lot less than you would once it's fully constructed. But in some cases, it doesn't work out so well. So this is one of those cases. So before we wrap up the video, I want to have my last final question is always about advice. So what kind of advice would you give to the person who's watching this video, who's thinking about a move to Mexico?
Well, of course, the thing I think we did right is you come down and rent first. You really, even though like us, we had been here, a couple dozen times over 8 or 9 years before we made the move. So we had looked at a lot of real estate by that point and had gotten a pretty good lay of the land, but you still don't really know everything you need to know without having been here for a while. So rent when you first get here is definitely, I think, good advice. So we had a year lease to rent a place, and that gives you a lot more time to truly, as a resident, not a tourist, get a lay of the land and figure out what you're going to do. Other than that, the big thing I guess I would say is either hopefully you already have a pretty good amount of patience, or you need to learn to have a pretty good amount of patience. We call it TIM. This is Mexico. Nothing works on the same time schedule that it worked in the U.S. Mañana does not mean tomorrow. Mañana just means not now. And learning to live on Mexico time at a much slower pace and having to wait a lot longer for things to happen is a big thing.
So patience. I was testing your patience there. Do you have it? If you have it already and you had no problem waiting for me to start that little clip, then you're going to do good in Mexico. Otherwise, work on your patience. That's my assignment to you. Work on your patience. Otherwise, watch more videos. I've got other videos from Cabo up here, other videos from other parts of Mexico down here. Watch those next, but take a breath first. Work with a little bit of patience. From Cabo San Lucas, wish you were here. Hasta luego.